Hey guys, how's it going? This is Endo. I'm going to talk a little bit about some alternative screaming techniques and talk about what they are, what they do, what I use them for, and basically some other stuff about mouth and tongue placement. Um, this will help you if you're struggling a little bit with a certain sound, or if you want to try out some different screams to increase your vocal diversity. So I learned a scream. I'm gonna move this microphone a little bit actually. I learned a scream through trial and error that is what I call a two-tone scream or a mixed voice scream. And basically, what happens is that there's three things that happen: one, distortion; two, a falsetto note; and three, a chest voice note, or just a regular sung note. And this is the way that I do my highs now, because my false chord, pure false chord highs, I can't get the proper resonance up in here to make those sound anything but just a breathy mess. So I'll give you a little bit of an example of, of the difference between my regular false chord high and the mixed voice fry that or the mixed voice false chord that I do. So a regular false chord high for me, I'll go from mid to high for those. So that's like a that's a high for my regular false chord scream, and I don't like it that much. It just sounds too breathy to me. So what I do, I add shrillness, and the way that I came to this scream was by taking a falsetto note like this and pushing a false chord scream through it. And I noticed that this happens in a few bands. A few vocalists did this. Um, Mitch Lucker, I think, did his highs like this, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Although sometimes his voice would go out, you can see in some of the live videos, and he'd sound like Donald Duck. And also, the vocalist from Job for a Cowboy did his early highs like this. So I'm going to demonstrate that one. So with those ones, you can kind of hear two notes. If I were to go through all the different portions that you hear, you'd hear the ah! You'd hear, let me figure it out. Ah! Ah! You'd hear ah! Ah! And you'd hear the distortion. And I don't know if this is healthy for anyone else, but this is just an interesting scream that I've found that works, and it tends to sound different day by day. What I'm doing, I'm a little bit congested right now. Drinking coffee, and cold coffee at that, probably doesn't help the sound. And I'll do it one more time. See, it's very shrill, and it's very, I won't say it's unique because I've definitely heard it in other places, but it's the way that I get my highs high. Because if I do a regular false chord high, I do a fry high. They just don't get high enough for me, for what I like to do. I'd also like to talk about one more thing, which is how your mouth shape affects your screams and what you can do to create different sounds. Because you hear a lot of interesting stuff, especially from slam and grindcore vocalists, where they're very like just like very guttural things going on. And a lot of this is created by navigating and expanding or contracting certain portions of your resonant spaces between your throat, changing the way that the sound passes through your mouth using your tongue, and raising or lowering your soft palate. So let's say you go in for a regular mid false chord. Just a very relaxed one, open mouth. Nothing fancy to it. Now listen to it if I were to move the resonant space of my soft palate up in sort of a yawning motion. You get sort of a more cavernous sound. You can also bulge out your throat as if you were talking like this. And I do that with my lows to create sort of a more cavernous space. I basically have no chin, it just goes straight into my neck. And then you sort of do the bullfrog throat and it gets even bigger, and then you can put that in your scream. So combining those two things, you get a sound that's a lot different than just so that's that, and the same goes with Fry. It's a little more difficult with Fry because Fry is like a very controlled type of scream, but you can definitely do it. I just did a false chord again. So you hear the difference on the regular one compared to the more cavernous one. And of course, there is tongue placement, which you hear in a lot of slam, deathcore, grindcore, that sort of thing, whatever. So there is the pig squeal, of course, where you close your mouth up tight, whatever, sort of like a oo, but also an e, oo, ee. And that's where people get the bree, because that's kind of the mouth shape that you want. And what you're doing with your tongue is you're sort of curling it up and backwards to almost touch. You can do it a couple different ways. You can push it really far back You can push it a little bit back. Okay, so let's do it for a side view. You can, if your tongue was like this straight, and this is where your front teeth would be, you can curl it up a little bit. You can curl it all the way back, and it gets two different sounds. And combined with that mouth shape, and I do them in fry because I find having them in a higher register makes it easier to get the overtone, which is the squeal part that you're looking for. So if I do So I'll go back to this and I'll do this while I'm doing that to show you what my tongue is doing. So So it gets pretty interesting. You can really mess around with that. You can do them in fry or false chord, but I don't like my false chord ones. Again, they're really loose. And I find they take a lot of air in comparison to the fry ones, and they sound worse, so why would I do them when the effect that I want comes from doing them in fry? Doesn't make sense. But plenty of people who can do them in false chord successfully and sound great. And then the other tongue placement one that I use quite often is, some people call it the tunnel throat, some people call it zombie screams. But basically, what you want to do is do the opposite of a pig squeal. So instead of going this way, you're gonna go downward that way. So in an exaggerated form, you want to take your tongue and put it either behind your teeth, behind your bottom teeth, or you can even shove it in between your teeth and your lip. So that, or that, and what happens, it creates an interesting cavern, and in combination with your mouth shape, you can get some interesting overtones as well. And you can hear that sort of thing from cattle decapitation and things like that, and it's used for voice acting when people are voice acting zombies as well, or at least it used to be before people started just doing effects instead. So I'll do it in false chord and I'll do it in fry. You might not see... Actually, I'll do it because you can de-exaggerate it gradually and get the placement of your tongue not so drastic like this, so you can actually use syllables without sounding like your tongue is caught to a pole. That was behind the lip. This is going to be behind the teeth. And then I can do it pretty much without doing either of those and just having my tongue relatively neutral and directing the air instead of harshly manipulating my tongue in that way. So in those ones, it's just barely touching the back of my teeth, but I can still make my tongue like fat so that it does that. And you hear Okay, so my streaming software crashed, but I'll do them in Fry as well, so you can see what that sounds like. Um, I'll do the exaggerated ones again, and then I'll do the regular ones that I use. That was behind the lip. Now behind the teeth. And then the neutral tongue position. And there's a certain amount of whistling that happens between your lips down here and where your tongue is placed, because you have a small cavernous area where air is passing through, as well as the normal sound which comes out the top and also your nose. So those are some interesting tongue placements, some interesting screams that you can do. I really don't want to teach inhales because they suck. So don't do that. Alright, this has been Endo. Crooked piece. Look at that crooked ass finger. Alright, see you guys.